Hello, Amit.
Andrew, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, very good, mate. Very good. Another change of scenery.
Yep. I just get bored, so decided to come from the Rove today. So I'm actually down the Rove downtown in Dubai.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, in one of their breakout rooms. So
Nice.
they're very kindly given me this space today.
I was just checking if Paul Bridges joined the show today, so we could hammer him about sponsorship again.
Yeah, it's getting a bit tiring. I mean, we keep mentioning them every single show, but yeah. So, but I mean, I've got a pretty good view actually. So if I get distracted, you need to tell me, because basically there is a swimming pool over here.
Amazing.
So if you see my eyes kind of keep darting over that way, I'm just making sure that people are right in the pool. Just kind of a bit of light saving, that's all it is. Yeah. How are you? How's your week been?
Bit of public safety. Yeah, very good, very good. Super busy, but yeah, very good actually. Yourself?
Good. Yeah, that's one of the reasons I'm out and about, because people are starting to kind of meet in person again. So, to get back to the office or kind of dive in here, this was the window. So decided to crack on with that. But welcome to everyone else as well. Hope you've had a good week. Thank you for joining us. We can see some people pulling in. We've got some regulars now that kind of tune in every week. Super happy and pleased about that. And obviously we know this goes out across not only YouTube, our website, but we now host this as a podcast. So, we're getting kind of different views across different platforms now, which is quite exciting.
We've got some kind of people who are kind of watching us on YouTube from all over the place. It's really interesting, actually. I genuinely still think they're tuning in to see your beard, mate, if I'm honest with you.
Yeah. That's it. Well, yeah, I mean, it's, I'm standing up today, so it should be better. It's kind of, you get all the glory. That's what it is. But I'll just trim it off just here.
Fantastic.
So what are we talking about today, Amit?
Okay, well, so today I think is quite interesting, mate. And I think this is, if I kind of go back to maybe some of our journey over the last maybe 7 or 8 years, or perhaps even slightly longer. Actually, maybe we can talk about when we first met, Andrew, because again, it was talking about salespeople, right? We used to have this. We used to like kind of meet up quarterly just to moan about basically our sales teams. And I think you're in a different company at that time, and obviously I was at Nexa. But essentially, that's how we started talking, right? Because we were both, I guess, in the marketing world at that point. And this kind of quarterly moaning session that we used to kind of, well, man, that was exactly it, right? That's where we used to come together. And
that's how we bonded. We bonded over a collective misunderstanding of kind of sales professionals, as it were, or commercial people. So I think that was it. Yeah, that was actually that was. I mean, going back, that was the obviously, what works, right? Do you kind of have an internal sales team? Do you have an external sales team? Are they talking to marketing? How are they operating? Yeah, we used to have a good, and tell you how old school it was in Moore Cafe in Cahood, which is now a hospital, I believe. So it doesn't even exist anymore.
Wow. Okay. No, but I mean, I think I think kind of tells a story, right? Because almost 10 years on now, or more actually. It's probably about 12 years on with sales and marketing is still that topic of sort of heated discussion, I guess, right?
Yeah.
But I guess if we look at it from a kind of digital sense, I know on a show we've previously kind of spoken about the 0 moment of truth.
Yeah.
But I think that's a study, and it's a study which is about 10 years old now, which was originated by Google and Forrester. And that 0 moment of truth study, really kind of, I guess, defines that challenge of a predicament that kind of companies face when it comes to sales and marketing, right? Because essentially what that study shows is that, or what it showed back, 10 years ago, is that your average consumer at that time would be 70% of the way through that purchasing cycle, right?
Yeah.
Before they make themselves visible to a salesperson. So that's whether they kind of walk into a showroom, pick up the phone,
That's right.
Fill out a form online.
Yeah.
And I guess what we were talking about is kind of what happens in that kind of 70% phase prior to that, or the pre 70% phase, when these guys are pretty much invisible, right?
Yeah.
You know, and I guess what we were talking about back then is that, look, people are empowered. They go online, they do their own research. But I guess the challenge is, and I think, you know, first and foremost, the fact that we're still talking about zero moment of truth 10 years on,
10 years
I think
down the line,
just shows how valid it was. And I think in the kind of COVID era, it's even more valid, right? Because I'm pretty sure now with digital sales, you know, perhaps people are even 90% of the way through that journey before they want to speak to a salesperson.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if there was still some kind of old school people, if we take the car, you know, analogy, that would go and visit the car showroom blind, just, hey, what have you got? Those people couldn't do that in the last few months. So they're forced to go and watch YouTube videos. They're kind of forced to go and understand. And also, I mean, we've seen a few of the organizations in the automotive industry now. It's purely online, no touch. You know, you kind of do the virtual look around, virtual walk around of the showroom, and then buy the car ultimately without even stepping foot in the showroom.
Yeah, and so, you know, so things are obviously, you know, changing. And I think what's also, you know, for one challenge I think we always faced with this was actually the consumer doesn't really care, right? Does the consumer care, you know, whether it's marketing or whether it's a sales touch point? I mean, you know, they're looking to buy a product or a service, and essentially what they want is just to speak to the best possible or most qualified person, or kind of engage in that most kind of streamlined process that allows them to do what they want to do. You know, exactly. And I think the challenge that we face is companies have almost that kind of, look, this is sales, this is marketing, whereas consumer just doesn't care. And I think this is that kind of era that we're in right now, where you know, companies need to kind of address this, right?
Yeah, totally. You're 100% right. From a usage perspective, I'm not fussed who I'm talking to, as long as they're qualified, as you say, to answer or help me, you know, in my inquiry. Whereas still, you know, we kind of in a business world, it's basically, no, this is marketing's role and sales role. Look, even, you know, when we think lead gen, so we talk about lead generation, and we frame some of this around lead generation, but well, who's responsible for that? Is it marketing or is it sales? I mean, traditionally it'll be, okay, well, marketing look after lead generation, and then we hand it to sales to close it. But again, that dynamic is shifting as well, right? It's not about, it's not black and white anymore. Has to be kind of blended.
Absolutely. And I think on that note, mate, I think we should let James in, right? He's kind of hanging in there patiently.
That's it. Yeah. What would have been more comical is if we didn't introduce him and we just spoke for the next 50 minutes.
I've been listening to you two chats about nonsense for the last 10 minutes, kind of gagging to come into this conversation and bring a little bit of normality into it.
Wonderful.
Remember, we do have the power to remove you, my friend.
True. I can only imagine what you were talking about 10 years ago, though. And yeah. Only imagine.
I think it was very similar to probably something that we'd have a conversation around today. Me talking about, I need to lose a bit of weight. You know, got to look after myself, got to take care. You know, all these kind of things. I think the conversation probably hasn't changed. It's just that for whatever reason now we're usually in the pub, not more cafe.
Speak for yourself, Andrew. Speak for yourself.
Yes, of course. Yeah, James. I mean, look, we obviously we were going to introduce you, but I think we'll leave the introduction to you, my friend. So if you'd like to, you know, kind of tell us who you are, that'd be great. Kind of bit of a journey as far as coming to the point today, and then that would be a nice lift off for us, I think, mate.
Yeah. Okay. So I've been in Dubai now for about 17 years. My entire career has been in the sales kind of parts of the business. Spent 10 years at Dell, of which 3 were over here. Then I spent about 11 years at The Entertainer, helping them with their development of the business, the international expansion, the white labeling products, again in the sales business development role. And then 3 years ago, started Pipeline, so Pipeline Business Growth Services, where we found a little bit of or we thought we'd found a niche, and I think we have found a niche in terms of a lot of businesses were outsourcing HR, IT, finance, etc. And from my point of view, where I call it the unsexy part of the kind of sales piece, whereas you guys are very lucky to do the sexy part. In terms
First
of,
time that word's ever been used from me and Amit, but well done.
yeah, it's fair. You did ask me to say that, but in terms of, yeah, so I found a niche in terms of where SMEs, small businesses, large businesses, enterprise businesses, they sometimes struggle to find the right person. They've either got limited resources or they've got specific people doing specific jobs, and people sometimes forget about the lead generation piece. When I first went into Pipeline, it was never looking to do what you guys do. So from the digital piece, because obviously I look reasonably young, but I am an absolute idiot when it comes to the technical piece of things generally. So I was very keen and set upon the way that I've always done it, from the early Dell days, from the internal sales through to the latter part of the other stuff I mentioned, where it was face-to-face or voice-to-voice, where we would take almost the last yard when it came to lead generation. So I know we're going to talk about it more as we kind of progress this chat today. But it's about, okay, how do you find the right person to talk to? How do you find there's a need, there's a requirement, there's a budget, there's a timeline, et cetera, because that's the time and effort that, to be honest, people really can't be bothered with. A lot of the time people just expect sales to fall in. And I think the question that we've had over the last probably 12 months, Amit and Andrew, in terms of how we can link kind of doing stuff, because you've got the marketing, and this is the marketing sales. What comes first? Kind of who's the tail, who's the dog kind of thing. And we quickly found that there is a massive requirement from a point of view of speaking to people. And when you say speaking to people, because in this day and age of the digital age, you get inundated with adverts on Facebook, Instagram, blah, blah, blah. You get emails through, and it's sometimes tough to actually clear the mist in terms of what's important, what's not important. Although you may remember some stuff. So if you get a phone call and go, hi, I'm calling from X, something will trigger in the mind that you may have got an email, you may have got a trigger on social, on LinkedIn, etc. So what we're trying to do is bridge that gap between the digital age and the non-digital age.
Cool. And so from a Pipeline perspective, what are those kind of core services, James? So I think just for a bit more context for people watching.
So the core service is really the ends lead generation piece, where we would do data build, we'd do email marketing, we would do kind of set up specific campaigns with specific scripts. One of the pieces that I actually enjoy the most about this role is when we sit down with a customer for an onboarding session and ask them some very simple questions. And it generally starts with why. Like, why are you doing this? Why is this the market you're going after? Why are you looking at that price? And a lot of the times people don't know the answers to that because they've been in the business for so long, or they're a startup or what have you. Focused on is looking at their own product. And that's why a lot of people fail, is because they're looking at their own products and not looking at their competitors, not looking at the market, not looking at the price points. And out of that 2, 3, 4 hour workshop, often comes a different strategy from when the customer came into the room, because they actually have a light bulb moment. And I think that's part of the value add that we bring to it. It's not just giving you leads, but actually it's going, well, why don't we maybe do some A/B testing? Let's do some lead generation on the market you think you can go after. And why don't we do some B testing on the market we think you can go after? And let's see the difference. Let's look at price points. Maybe you're too cheap. Let's look at your competition. Who are they going after? So we ask some reasonably simple questions, but some of them can be quite difficult to answer because people just haven't been asking themselves those questions. Because I always go back to the time when I was running a sales team in the Netherlands for Dell. In the UK, you can say, do this, and people will do it, and they'll grumble and stab you behind the back, and they'll do it, but they won't do it with a way that they actually want to be doing it, and they'll be talking behind your back. Whereas Netherlands, when you say, please do that, they go, why? And that really, for me, just made me realize that any decision I'm making or any question I'm asking a team or a colleague or someone to do, I have to ask myself the question before that. And and answer, okay, why do I want them to do it? And there's 3 or 4 reasons why, so you can back it up, rather than just throwing out questions that a lot of people often do.
Okay, all right, great. No, I think that really helps. So I think one of the services that you guys do in terms of lead generation is more kind of traditional, right? In terms of, you mentioned that you don't want to go down the digital route, but you guys kind of do some of the old school kind of picking up the telephone work as well,
I should have. Well, that's what we do, to be honest. I've waffled around my time in Amsterdam and what have you, but never mind. But yeah, we literally have
that's where you went off on a tangent.
Exactly. I was just thinking of the Hallison days of Amsterdam, the canals. But in terms of, we are literally the end of the sales process that, to be honest, everybody hates to do, but everyone knows they need to do it. And whether that is themselves or somebody else like us. So we pick up the phone and call people. We go through gatekeepers. We speak to the right people. So this is the high touch piece where we have to get the pitch correct. We have to get the elevator pitch correct. We have to make sure we've got answers to any objections. We have to ask people the right questions. So that's all part of what we do on the onboarding piece, where it's the end that nobody likes, but there's a bit of a science behind it. It's what I've done for 15, 20 years now, 20 years, in terms of there's a bit of science behind it. And it's simple things of how do you ask for somebody. You don't ask for someone's full name, you just ask for the first name. Pretend you know them if you're going through a gatekeeper. So all that sort of stuff, all the little tricks that, to be honest, we do day in, day out. And it's and again, when I say we do lead generation, I often use the analogy of we'll take the horse to about 10 foot to the water. Because we're never going to make the horse drink at this stage, but we'll take it to a level where when we have arranged the meeting or the callback, when they receive that from the client of ours, the customer or the potential customer will know the product, know why they're calling, they're interested in the product, the timing's correct, and timing can depend on different products. So insurance might be 6, 9, 12 months out, ERP may be longer out, or if you're selling a widget, it might be a month out. So we make sure that we do all that kind of beforehand, so we know when we're booking the lead, it's a lead that's relevant to the client.
Yeah. I think just to go back to an earlier point you made, I think when we first met must have been close to a couple of years ago now. And actually I was just really kind of intrigued as to what your business was, because, you know, we're used to a new digital agency setting up shop here every week, right? But I think it was one of my colleagues, and he said, look, I'm speaking to a company at the moment, and actually what they've set up is a sales business. And part of that business is based around sort of telesales and telemarketing. And I was like, okay, well, this is actually really interesting, especially because of that lead generation overlap. Because obviously, you know, what we've been doing for many years is digital lead generation, right? Pretty much what you're talking about in terms of, you know, social campaigns and all of that kind of, you know, I'd say quite busy, you know, set of activities at the moment, which, you know, everyone seems to be doing. And I guess when I came across what your business did, I found it really interesting that in this day and age, somebody still felt that there was value in that kind of telesales personal touch. Because again, if I go back to some of mine and Andrew's conversations, you know, I think a lot of our frustration would come from generating leads for clients, and essentially the client's not really knowing what to do with them, right? So we'd qualify them using digital technology, but actually, you know, when all they had to do was really then pick up the phone and start communicating, that's where we saw that was where there was a bit of a struggle. And so you're absolutely right. People don't really like doing it, but essentially, I think part of the reason why digital marketing has taken off the way it has is because it kind of plays to that role, right? Nobody likes doing it, so here's a solution. Yeah, you know, that means that you don't have to do it. Whereas, like what you said, this is important. You need to do this, and the only way genuinely you're going to build a relationship with someone is by engaging and speaking with them, right?
Yeah, correct. And I think, and that's really where, and I say my strong point is on the offline piece, and you'll have seen it as well in terms of everyone wants to talk digital. Everyone is digital. You've been in the market for a long time. You've seen people come and go, and I know we're going to get onto it later, but in terms of the proposition between online and offline is very different, but the proposition between online and offline together is pretty unique. And kind of my strength lies in that, or our strength, Pipeline strength, lies in the offline piece, because people still like to be spoken to.
Yeah, I think as well. I think you hit the nail on the head though with the kind of workshop you're doing. There isn't only that kind of the part of the job that people don't like. Frankly, people are just not. No, they don't know the basics, right?
Yeah.
So even from a kind of close perspective or from a qualification perspective, you've got a whole host of sales teams that are effectively burning through time and money and resource, are chasing their tail, right? You know, and I think that sales enablement piece and kind of understanding process, understanding, you know, the pipeline or the forecast. I mean, some of these things still to this day in this part of the world, they're non-existent, right? I think you've kind of stumbled across this when you go in and have these workshops, right?
Yeah, totally. And a good example is kind of what you're doing in terms of creating leads. There's a number of businesses we've worked with historically where we've run an amazing digital campaign and we've got 1,000 leads. And you're like, okay, what are you doing with them? They're going, well, we haven't got time to call them. So the reality is that they've spent, and digital's more expensive than the stuff I do, but in terms of, you go, okay, you've spent $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 getting people interested, and someone spent time putting the name and details in or what have you. And if you don't call them back within a couple of days, you've lost them and it's wasted money. And that's to say where we come in when it comes, because end of the day, you may, okay, whether it's a digital campaign and you put your details in, you want to be spoken to because you may be interested. You want to be, because you can't go through the whole sales pipeline through forms. Yeah, it works to a level and it pulls people down the pipeline and through the funnel. But I think there's I still believe there is a requirement for what we're doing just from the personal side of things.
Yeah, and I think that goes to the point of there's two different types of leads, right? And I guess, you know, when we're looking at that kind of digital marketing world, you know, the leads that we typically produce from campaigns, whether that's social media, whether that's Google, these are really kind of marketing qualified leads, right? These are the kinds of leads, you know, where essentially someone's shown some level of intent, they've maybe downloaded some content, they want some more information, but essentially that's still not qualified. And there's, you know, and I think the way that we obviously define things, and we've spoken about this on this show as well, is, you know, there is a big difference between sort of marketing qualified leads and sales qualified leads. Yeah. But Andrew, I mean, tell me if I'm wrong, and then James as well, but I mean, the amount of times when we go into organizations to have these kinds of conversations, people actually don't know the difference between the two, right? Yeah. They kind of class leads as the same. They're like, leads are leads.
Leads
right?
are leads. Yeah.
And you know, we actually spend quite a lot of time sort of educating people in terms of the difference, because there's a vast absolute difference between the two.
Yeah, you're 100% right. I mean, I think the kind of terminology is just leads or inquiries, right? So that kind of, then they get bundled into the same thing. And as we know, you know, only 5% of, you know, those inquiries at any one time are going to probably want something right now. And the challenge is, again, from a marketing sales handoff, most salespeople want to sell right now, right? Unless you said, obviously, you've got a long sales cycle or whatever, but people want to deal with something right now. So then you've got a conflict between the kind of business ownership or brand ownership and sales individuals who basically will focus their energies and effort on, you know, possibly someone that's going to close tomorrow versus something that might be bigger down the line as well. So, you know, all leads are not treated equally or not created equally. However, they are treated equally. So they're treated exactly the same. And I think that's one of those first conversations that we have, you know, with prospects and clients. That is, look, you know, just because we run a campaign just because somebody has seen an ad, interacted with that ad, gone to a landing page, filled out a form, and asked to be called. Even when you call them, they might say, "I didn't ask to be called." Right? So, you know, you've got some challenges to get thrown through. So I think it's just an education piece. We should, just before we jump in, James, I should say, we've had a couple of people raise their hands and stuff. If you've got questions, write a question, guys. We've got a few questions that have come in already, and we'll answer them when we kind of go through the process. Or you can jump on the chat, and we all see that, guys. So we probably didn't say that. Another person's raised their hand. Cool, good stuff. I like it. But you can also chat and kind of go on the Q&A as well. So yeah, I mean, what do you think, James? You know, this kind of qualification process and the kind of MQLs and SQLs.
Yeah. Well, I think that's really that's been the biggest struggle for us, because to be honest, you can get MQLs, and this isn't from you, but MQLs haven't been really done that well, very, 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 very cheaply from anywhere. And yeah, that's what the market's used to. You go, well, I can get 600 leads. They don't even say MQLs. I can get 600 leads for $500. And it's like, well, go on then. Go for your life. And
go for it, yeah.
It will waste your time most of the time. I'm not saying every time, but most of the time, where kind of I'm saying the fact that we're providing leads. And it's really only since speaking to you guys, it is actually marketing qualified leads versus sales qualified. Like the amount of effort and time to get a sales qualified lead, if there's no MQLs coming into the pipeline to help that, is quite substantial. You could pull a campaign on Facebook now and have 100 leads in about 20 minutes. If you extend the audience to a large enough audience, a geography to a large enough geography. And I know a couple of towns in Asia where there's 25,000 people looking to inquire about your product. But to be honest, and that's the reality is that unless you choose a company who knows what they're doing, and this really kind of, again, probably fits more with you guys than me at the moment in terms of there's 900,000 digital agencies saying they can do leads. But the reality is, are they quality leads versus kind of quantitative leads? And some people have the kind of the rugs pulled over their eyes and all that kind of stuff by going, well, I can get these leads for that price. And that puts us on the back foot because we're trying to compete against a non-level playing field kind of scenario.
Yeah.
And talking about I'm actually hiring people, I'm actually getting people to talk, I'm actually doing this. That's why mine's a bit more expensive and da-da-da. Well, some people get it, some people don't get it. And that's what we're trying to do is re-educate people going, you would rather have 2 incredible leads that's been properly qualified, you know exactly who you're talking to, there's absolute opportunity, than 1,000 leads of somebody who, to be honest, you've got no idea whether they're buying or not buying.
And then you haven't got the capabilities of dealing with 1,000 anyway.
Correct. And you'll miss that one as well. And in the 1,000, there may be one amazing one, but there's so many you get lost in and go, do you know what? I can't be bothered. And you've lost it.
Yeah. And I think that's a really kind of, big issue when I think companies are kind of almost focusing just on that digital only approach because they want a volume of leads. And I think a lot of this still comes down to, you know, people looking at wrong metrics. We had a whole show on wrong metrics last week. But essentially, you know, if you're in charge of marketing, you know, perhaps what they're being asked is how many leads have been generated this week through marketing efforts, right? And, you know, and if they say, right, it's 100, they're going to get a pat on the back. But if they say it's 2, perhaps not.
Yeah.
You know, and I think this is part of that challenge because, again, back to your point, James, you know, those 2 leads might be, you know, 100% qualified and both of them may end up becoming a customer. Whereas you may waste your time with, you know, with that 100 and not get anywhere.
Yeah.
And I think there's kind of a lot of re-education that almost needs to be kind of done. And I think that goes from kind of decision makers, leaders, and perhaps even all the way through to kind of marketing people and salespeople. Because again, in our world, you know, we kind of speak to a lot of sales directors who don't really want to speak to us because they want marketing to deal with what we do. But for us, we want to know if leads that are being generated through sort of digital channels are qualified or not. And more often than not, we just get you know, some are good, some are bad. You know, some people aren't picking up the phone. But again, from our perspective, that's their job, right? We've done our bit. You've got to, you know, you've got to, and again, we've sat in huge meetings where the sales director's been like, well, we've got a policy of we'll try once or twice, and if they don't pick up, that means they're not interested. And honestly, we just sat there, you know, kind of almost dumbstruck because it just, you know, like how does that even work, right? But But yeah, I think it's fascinating in terms of that. But James, you know, I think go on, Andrew.
No, I was just going to say, I think there's a reluctance sometimes, right? So I think the thing is, there's almost, you know, you can get a bit greedy in the sense that if you can just sit here and kind of take these leads and take these leads, it's quite easy just to dismiss, you know, the quality of them, right? Because as you said, they may not, going back to some of the other challenges that the organizations have, they may not have a sales process in place. You know, it's laughable the amount of organizations that have a CRM here. You know, that everyone's CRM is an Excel sheet or Post-it note stuck all over their desk. So some of it's almost like where from a marketing piece, technology has come involved and people have been involved, but from a sales perspective, there is some still incredible basic sales skills that are just not being leveraged because they're not given the tools. And the way these tools are presented to them is, we're going to track this, we're going to track that, we're going to, you know, make sure you're making your calls. And like, well, hold on a minute, I don't want to. When it's not about that, it's about kind of simplifying their life, and ultimately, as you said, quality versus quantity, right?
And Andrew, I think that's critical from a sales perspective. You need ownership, and I think that and again, I'm a salesperson, so I hate administration. I hate all that stuff. But the reality is that as long as there's ownership along a sales pipeline, because you can't just let a salesperson run off and say, and meet them again in a month's time and say, what have you closed? There has to be, if you know they're watching you and you're watching them, and there is an ownership in a CRM, then you can track what, and this isn't a big brother, although it can be big brother, but it's just bringing the best practice into a sale, because sales is a science.
Yeah.
You have to look at, okay, you talk to someone first, you got a 10% chance, then you kind of send a proposal, then you talk about it, then all the way through. And there's different ways to deal with every single different level. But you need to understand what level an opportunity is at. Is it an MQL? And then, okay, if it's an MQL, how far down that line is it? Then is it an SQL? If it's an SQL, where is it at on the sales qualified lead? Is it right at the beginning? Is it right at the end? And these are all the processes that, to be honest, an Excel spreadsheet, unless you're a genius, can't do that. You do need some kind of technology that, and again, we're not going to build something, but you use a CRM that is in the markets, which is obviously HubSpot that we're using as well. But and it makes your life easier, because then you can see for me, you've got the bird's eye view of your business in a snapshot, so you know what's going on. If someone asks you, and which is critical.
I think using technology in a CRM as well, you know, removes that emotion piece, because there is that kind of clash between the marketing and sales where it's like, you know, these leads you're providing me are rubbish, right? Well, no, they're not rubbish. You're just not handling them properly. And I think this, obviously, having a centralized system like a CRM or some other kind of technology in place just allows people to see actually what's happened. So, you know, this individual, even prior to calling them, even if you tried to call them 3 times, instead of kind of, you know, forgetting them, well, no, this guy's, you know, his lead score is phenomenal, right? You know, he's been to the website 5 times, he's opened my proposal 3 times, you know, unless he's really teasing me, right? Or she's teasing me, as it were. You know, it's really basically, you know, what's going on here, right? So I think the thing is that's also helps to understand and improve process, right?
Yeah, agree.
We've got a question there. I mean, I don't know if you want to jump on a question that just popped in, or go on to it after.
Sure. Well, yeah, I was just going to. Let's tee that up. I think. Well, actually, it's a question I think for you, James, and it comes from Lana, and it's what kind of clients do you work with? So actually, that's an important question. So is this kind of like an SME offering, or is this kind of more enterprise focused? I mean, where is that kind of, you know, who needs this service more than anyone, I guess?
So I've kind of, Pipeline was started initially as an SME, because we're thinking big companies have got the big sales forces and all this kind of great stuff. And it was very much an SME focused product. Over the last 2 years, it's become very clear that it's not only an SME product, it goes across the whole kind of scale and size. We work with multinational FTSE 100 companies, NASDAQ listed companies, who need leads, all the way down to small businesses.
Yeah.
And we're also industry agnostic to a level. There's certain products we wouldn't sell and couldn't sell, etc. But in terms of, again, I use the analogy of when I used to work for Dell. I could talk about a grey box, but I didn't have a clue about what was going inside it, but I could get in front of the right person to talk about it. And then if that's kind of ask the technical questions, I'd bring in one of my technical people. So we're kind of that frontline sales where we'd get the initial interest, and you can be selling widgets, pipes, ERP software, kind of properties, etc. As long as we have the right information to get the hook, it's important to have the hook, the USP. What makes you different to because too many businesses don't have a differentiator, don't have a USP where, unfortunately, you'll be kind of running uphill in treacle if you can't differentiate yourself in the marketplace, because it's a so what about your product, because you're not doing anything different. So as long as we have a so what differentiator, a USP, then to be honest, we can open up just about any type of product.
Okay, and that's because there's a follow-up question to that as well, which is, so there's an assumption that, you know, this form of kind of lead generation is only needed for services and products that don't sell well online. Do you reckon that's the case, or is this really applicable to most businesses then?
We're focused on B2B, to be honest.
Okay.
So I think the B2C piece is something that we've spoken about, and we're entering it in a small way for a specific niche product that we're doing at the moment, but it is B2B. So, like, would we sell trainers? Probably not. To be honest, I think there's a very clear line between the B2B and B2C, and then within B2C, 50, 60, 70, 80% maybe is probably not applicable for us. Mm-hmm. There will be opportunities to do like a B2C play, but our focus is B2B, so business to business, where you do need that face time, that voice time, etc. And we're selling cloud services, so we're selling cloud services into Canada at the moment over the phone from Dubai. So that shows kind of how kind of versatile the offering can be. So we're calling from Dubai, calling a different time zone into Canada around Google Cloud Services. So I'm doing it really well. I'm being successful with it.
Yeah, and I think you said there as well, I mean, from that initial thought process that those enterprise layer clients, you know, have got a Salesforce, or they've got this, or they've got a lead machine, or they've got anything. I mean, it's just not the case, right? Or a lot of the time they don't have the capability or the desire to kind of, you know, activate a whole team with all of the other things that are associated with that from a human resources perspective, a cost perspective, right?
I was really surprised at the amount of large businesses that we've spoken to over the last 12, 18 months who use large call centers. In terms of, like very surprised in terms of the outsourcing of the stuff they don't want to be doing. They're not the non-sexy stuff, as we call it. And that really kind of pricked my ears up in terms of the interest. Going, actually, well, I know what I'm doing. I'm not a call center of 500 people, but I'm a call center who does it. Well, I can't call it a call center. I don't know what I'm called, but in terms of, we do lead generation well, and we know what we're doing. We can be multilingual, etc. And it is surprising because of the fact that and again, this is me being on the business and probably being in the business too early by going, we are only an SME focused business because that's where I think they want our services. Whereas actually, when you asked a few questions and a couple of people talk to you about it, you go, really? Like, enterprise will actually want this product? And the business has evolved now where probably 80% of my business is from the enterprise side of the scale versus the SME, because we're not cheap, we're not expensive, but we're not cheap. So you can get cheaper lead generated services from elsewhere, but from my point of view, it's the quality versus the kind of quantity.
Yeah, I mean, over the last sort of 6 months or so, we've obviously seen sort of dramatic change in terms of how people sell now. You know, obviously the pandemic's been a major sort of, you know, factor within that. But how does Pipeline really support businesses like, you know, those who, you know, perhaps sold in a completely different way previously? And I guess if we're looking at enterprise, I guess there used to be maybe an over-reliance on things like trade shows and exhibitions and things like that. I mean, how does that sort of impact you? What about those companies who are perhaps, I don't know, they perhaps got a shortfall of leads right now? Is this something where Pipeline can come in and fill that gap or plug that gap?
It is. I think, kind of from my point of view, that's really your biggest opportunity from a Nexa. Because, okay, how do you, because people are spending millions or hundreds of thousands, if not millions, on building big stands in the trade center or in wherever, and that was the normal 9 months ago. So what is the new normal now? You can do a virtual conference or a virtual get-together with New York, London, Dubai, Sydney, blah, 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 have a far more productive session, week, whatever, because I know ATM was done digitally this year for the first time. I think GITEX will be a mixture of both, but a lot of people spend a lot of money on travel, on building stuff, and actually not talk to the right people. The focus here is we can create through digital and offline, we can create virtual stuff. And I don't like using stuff, but virtual things that will act as a better route to market potentially. Because certainly what I found, like 9 months ago, we're all traveling to Bahrain for a meeting and you'd be up for 2 days. And that was the normal. The new normal now is we'll do 5 Zoom calls in a day with Bahrain, Qatar, Saudi, Oman, and somewhere else. You're far more productive and you're not chasing your tail. And I think that, okay, trade shows aren't going to go away, but I think that in terms of what we can do, bringing people together, talking to the right person, it's far more cost effective and you get to the right person at the right time. Certainly in the last 5 or 6 months, we've spoken to more people far easier because people are open to that conversation, with a telephone conversation or a face-to-face Zoom conversation or Teams conversation now than they ever were, because especially in this region, you had to do everything face-to-face.
Yeah.
And it's kind of the same everywhere because, oh yeah, I can't see you this week because I'm traveling to Singapore for a work conference. You look at the likes of Facebook and all these guys, they're not having more than 50 people in a room now until the end of 2021. So the world has changed. And I think it's changed for the better purely because it's a more efficient way of doing business. We all love a jolly. We all love going, but in terms of the efficiency of the business, in terms of how we can bring it together digitally and non-digitally, makes more sense.
Yeah, I think there's a change in skill set as well. I mean, I think there's some sales professionals that, you know, are reliant on that relationship sale for so long, where it is go and have a coffee, you know, sit down, have a chat, versus, you know, very focused kind of conversation, as you said. I mean, the ability, I think you hit the nail on the head with two. One is the availability. So people just are more available now because they are not traveling, they're not bouncing, they're not on a plane. You know, we see a lot of regional travel and global travel here being, you know, a hub in Dubai where we're broadcasting from today. So you've got that. And then also you've got, you know, the skill set as well is tough. Like, I'll be honest, when you know, this first kicked in, this was uncomfortable for me as well. Right, trying to kind of pitch to someone or to sell to someone in this environment, it's learning new skills, right? To kind of see, you know, especially a bugbear of mine is camera, not being able to kind of see someone if they're, you know, what the small, you know, kind of, are they smiling? Are they leaning forward? Are they interested? Are they sharing? You know, all of these things that over the years of face-to-face sales that we've relied on, that was taken away, right? Kind of overnight.
And seeing and also seeing your own face in the camera as well is not the greatest.
You mean just me personally, or that's just, yeah? Okay, thanks, mate. Yeah, perfect. Yeah, thanks.
You can hide behind the beard now, though. You can kind of pull it round and.
I can tie it up now. It's got to that point, or I can just wear it as a mask. It's fine.
It's the first Viking to come out of. It's the first Viking to come out of COVID.
I think he was the first to enter COVID as well, in all fairness.
Yeah, true.
I think just on that kind of, you know, that kind of digital sales piece, Andrew. You know, and I guess you know, from both sides of it now, once leads are qualified, I guess that whole digital sales process is now very different again, right? So, you know, again, you know, people used to, I mean, we still used to print off proposals in response to RFPs and all that kind of nonsense, right? And you know, all of that seems to have stopped. But you know, in terms of actual changing how people you know, create proposals now, Andrew, you know, the sales content that's kind of required as part of that kind of marketing piece, and then how that sort of crosses over into kind of James's world. And then what are your kind of thoughts with that?
Yeah, I think it's because, you know, there is that lack of potential face-to-face, or there is a change in the way that we're kind of operating. The communication from a sales perspective is just is far more. It needs to be far more kind of dynamic, I'd say. So the thing is that obviously we're now all spending our times on these screens. People want to kind of have more information available to them. So previously, you know, even ourselves would be sending just a simple proposal, perhaps a pricing document or commercials. But now there's a lot more content in there, right? You know, we use things like Panda Docs and things to create proposals where you can embed videos, you can embed images, you can embed pricing tables. And also from a sales tool perspective, it allows you to track, again, what's happening with that document. So instead of kind of, you know, fingers crossed, I've sent an email, who knows if I've opened an email, who knows if that proposal is being looked at. You know, these tools now allow us to see the interest level, right? We can see if someone's going back to open a proposal. We can see if someone's got your email. You can track everything now. So not only the way that we're presenting those commercials or those proposals, you know, I'd say more visually appealing as opposed to a large Word document. You know, there's a lot more infographics in there. There's a lot more visual imagery to explain the process, because you perhaps not have had 2 or 3 face-to-face meetings to get to that point of pricing. But it's also just that tracking as well. And what that tracking does, is it does allow us to understand what people are looking at. You know, so instead of kind of producing these huge proposals, as you said, that perhaps were being printed off before, you know, shared, you know, you got a 60-page document that no one ever read, but it just looked pretty good on the desk, versus a 1-pager. Now we can kind of determine what people are doing, right?
Right. No, I think that makes sense. And I guess from your perspective, you know, James, you guys are obviously, you know, using different kind of digital touch points as well, you know, and, you know, how does that kind of look in kind of your world? You know, what kind of content should companies really be using really to kind of facilitate that last mile lead generation process?
Kind of from my point of view, it is okay, what technology should they be using in terms of, like, you've kind of answered the question there, Andrew, in terms of the proposals. If I get a 60-page proposal, I read the first page and then good luck for the rest of it in terms of, yeah. But I've seen some stuff from you guys in terms of you've created a 60-page proposal digitally, but actually what you've done is you've created in a way that people can go to the interesting points to them, which is the first page and the pricing page and then stuff in between. And you can see when people are interested. Our stuff is less technically driven, other than the fact we kind of use the drip campaigns. So rich text rather than HTML. We can see when people have opened, clicked, landing pages, just the simple stuff without causing annoyance. Because we all get spammed, and I remember the good old days when Groupon launched and you were getting 45 emails a day from Groupon, and I just wouldn't buy purposely because they annoyed the shit out of me. Excuse the language. Just because they were literally, and then the other ones came along and it's just like, seriously, you're getting, my email box is full after an hour's meeting just of discount places, and that just becomes, and you have to be careful on that. That's, again, more B2C or financial services, because everybody's got, and going back to the telesales piece, everyone has an issue with, hi James, this is so-and-so calling from financial. How are you? It's like, great, good. I've been in Dubai a long time. Yep, you've called me 17 times over the last 5 years. Oh, really? I didn't realize that. And you get pissed off, or a local bank or an international local bank kind of sends you stuff in Arabic. It's like, I've been your customer for 10 years and you're still sending me stuff in Arabic. You have to be relevant and you have to be timely. Otherwise, we lead such busy lives now that if it isn't relevant and it isn't timely, then you'll just switch off.
Yeah, that makes total. No, it makes total sense.
Sorry, mate, I switched off.
I couldn't see your eyes closed for your beard.
So I guess, look, if we kind of look at this from a kind of market and sales perspective, I think what would be kind of really useful for everyone at the moment is really kind of understand that full journey, right? So if we kind of say that, you know, what James and Pipeline do is that kind of, you know, that last piece of that sales process, you know, taking the horse sort of 10 meters to the water. Andrew, do you want to kind of go through that first, almost like that ideal scenario where essentially we're combining, you know, our world from that kind of digital marketing perspective and James's world, and what does that kind of really look like, you know, from a kind of linear perspective, from kind of start to finish?
Yeah, look, I think there's you know, the ideal or dream scenario is possible now, right? So I think first and foremost, you know, previously we would talk about this, you know, kind of mythical funnel, and it looks nice, and this is kind of what happens. But I think the thing is now that, you know, and we'll talk about it in a bit, but we're practically doing that now for, you know, actively doing that, sorry, for clients. So from that kind of initial, you know, audience targeting, the individuals that we want to have a conversation with, it's reaching out to them through kind of digital means, identifying them, driving them back into an initial point of contact, which is usually kind of a website or a landing page. Once those individuals start to fill out that information, they then kind of get dropped into this workflow or nurturing environment. Now, the beauty of that is that at any point, if they want to jump out and straight down to the bottom of the funnel to have a conversation with the guys at Pipeline and James and obviously his team, they can, or they can continue to be nurtured along this process. So essentially, you know, what happens is that these individuals have a kind of smooth journey, but control their journey down the funnel, right? So they're not interrupted, as James said. They're not distracted. They get spoken to when they want to be spoken to. So you know, where we're working collectively together at the moment, these individuals are being pulled down this funnel, and as soon as they want to have a conversation, or as soon as we believe that they look to be ripe for a conversation, and that again is back to tracking, it's back to lead scoring. If someone's going back to a website, downloading another brochure, or looking at a video, or engaged more, and we feel like there's an opportunity and they want to reach out and have a conversation, that kind of falls all the way down to ultimately the point where there is that personal touch. Back to James's piece, when you know, there's a real conversation that happens, and collectively using all of that data. So it isn't a blind call. It isn't like you know, hello mate, like the financial services thing. You know, it's very much in front of, you know, James's team. He's got an entire kind of history of that individual, so he can customize the conversation as well. And then ultimately, you know, qualifying that, and then that is what kind of gets handed over to a client, right? So you know, at that point.
So let's go into your piece more. So if a lead essentially gets qualified and handed over to your team, James, what's that kind of process typically look like?
In terms of a handover from, say, you guys to us? Yeah,
exactly. So marketing qualified lead, and that needs to be converted.
Well, this, to be honest, is, as I say, is the perfect kind of sales funnel, bringing together the digital, non-digital. Like your issues have been, you've been delivering lots of MQLs to customers who might not be happy because they're going, they're rubbish. It's like, well, I'm delivering what you've asked for. I'm struggling to get the quality of information into Pipeline to generate leads. So in terms of when we're getting leads in from say you guys, the phone call is already a warm, semi-warm one, because somebody has made an effort to put some kind of information or clicked on something, so they understand it. So, hi, I'm calling from so-and-so. They'll go, you clicked on this website then, or you've put some information asking for some more information. And then that opens up the whole thing. And I think that one of the differences between this solution and it might not sound much, but the amount of leads that get lost or just go into a bin when, say, we call and go, are you interested in this product? No, not yet, maybe in a year or 6 months. whether we say we're going to do it or not, historically we've kind of parked it and gone, and we'll call them in 6 months. Will the client be with us in 6 months? Who knows? Or will we remember? Whatever. But the beauty of this is we can just start the cycle again. We can pass that lead back to you, and then they start nurturing again. And it's a way that's in a nice way, non-obtrusive, so that you just don't miss out on opportunities, because times are tough enough without missing out on opportunities. And if we can build I kind of call it the ecosystem, the sales ecosystem, the sales pipeline ecosystem, where you're getting the best of both worlds, digital, non-digital, and it goes from digital to non-digital, back to digital, over to non-digital, stays in digital a bit longer, but they're in the ecosystem all the time. And we know when they're going to buy, we know when they're interested to buy, we know what's happened. And I think with the proposition that we've got, it is very unique, because you drop leads because the MQLs aren't good enough. We drop leads, or they drop leads because of kind of other reasons. But together, collectively, it's a pretty powerful statement to say we can find someone who has never heard of your product, put them through a process where they know your product, understand it, want to learn a bit more about it, are told about it, asked if they want a meeting or a call. The meeting and call takes place, and that's 90% done is from our sales ecosystem.
Right. And then it's going to come down to sort of price negotiation.
But again, that's
things like that, essentially. And that's not you. No, exactly.
Because that's the 10 feet from the water scenario.
Yeah.
Again, that's part of the kind of conversations that kind of myself and Andrew can have with businesses, in terms of, okay, we've passed you 15 leads this month, of which it came from 600 MQLs. We've given you 15 qualified leads, but you've closed none. Why is that? Because the leads are rubbish. And we'll always get because the leads are rubbish. But we can actually go into these businesses and sit down and go, okay, you tell me why the leads are rubbish. Well, I called him once and he didn't answer. Okay, people are busy. Let's think about an alternative. Maybe if you've got an address, drop an email. When can you? So that goes back to the sales environment. Everyone thinks if they can get a lead, it's easy to sell. You've still got a job to do, but you have to have processes in place. You have to have systems in place. You have to have management and structure and all that kind of good stuff in place. Because if we hand you a lead, it's not just you're going to call someone a closed business.
Yeah,
it's going to be there's still work to be done. But again, we can help with that as well further down the line.
I completely agree with you, and I think it's such an important kind of process. I think when you get that kind of marketing and sales alignment, I think, like how both of you just sort of described this, you're basically eliminating a lot of I guess, opportunities to potentially lose a good prospect, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's such a key part. And like you said, times are tough enough already without sort of making it even worse on yourselves. But I genuinely feel, and again, this was one of the reasons why we were so keen on sort of partnering with Pipeline. And I just feel as if, and I mentioned this in the kind of email intros and things like that for the build up to this show, but I genuinely do feel as if almost we've gone a bit too far down the line with digital, and we've lost that personal touch and that kind of important physical personal touch point, which used to happen. But again, that over reliance on digital for me is challenging. And it's difficult for me to kind of say that as someone who's probably been leading that movement, right? Especially on a local level. But the reality is, I still love being spoken to by a good salesperson.
Yeah.
But the problem is, most of those interactions are happening over really kind of poorly crafted emails. And like what you said, you never want to work with them on the back of that. And I think this is the real opportunity. And it's almost like companies almost have to kind of revisit that strategy, bring some of that old with the new, because actually there was nothing wrong with the old way of doing things. It was just the new ways, just like you said, sexier, right? But we've kind of almost lost track of the things that actually really used to work. Billion-dollar businesses have been built on the back of, essentially the offline sales processes. And I think it's really key that if we can start to kind of marry that digital marketing and the offline piece, I think for companies, it's really the way forward. And there's a really good chance that most of their competitors aren't going to be doing this. I mean, so, I think final words, guys. I think, just any kind of tips for anyone who's out there in terms of perhaps what they should be focusing on. Any kind of words of wisdom other than about Andrew's
relevance.
beard?
I think from my point, it's and I know we've done a couple of shows together, myself and Andrew on the stuff. You can waste a huge amount of money by thinking that doing digital advertising works, unless you've got some. So you think, great, I'll set up a Facebook page and spend money. LinkedIn's expensive. If it's not done correctly with people who know what they're doing, you will waste money. And same with, kind of goes with the offline piece as well. And you have to look at your products from afar, from a top, and understand it first, because you need to understand your market, you need to understand your competitors, you need to know your price points, etc., SWOT analysis. Because if you don't know that, then you've got no hope. Well, not no hope, that's probably quite harsh, but in terms of there isn't much chance of you selling your product because you just don't know what you're competing against. And solve a problem.
Yeah.
Solve a problem, because too many people try to sell something when there isn't a problem. Try and find a problem for your product to fix it.
No. Makes complete sense. Andrew, any final words?
I think from a focus perspective, it's not a good idea to have a swimming pool in your eye line when you're doing a digital growth show. That's from the focus perspective. But from a business perspective, I think the biggest thing is really it's kind of organizing your own house and making sure your own house is in order, because we see it a lot. To use a kind of restaurant analogy, it's like, hey, listen, come my new restaurant, come round, generate all this business, and you open the doors and there's no food in there. Or people don't know how to serve you, or you're kind of promoting a 5-star service, but a 1-star meal. So I think that's something that sometimes gets overlooked. There's an excitement associated to, the kind of lead gen or the kind of business process, without kind of understanding what happens when these things do start coming through the door. And I think, James put it there quite beautifully as far as that ecosystem. So, we talk about this a lot, where it's like a lot of companies will do a firework approach. They'll light this big firework. Oh, it's really nice. And then sit back and then it's done, right? But we prefer that fire where you're kind of stoking the fire, you're keeping it burning, you're kind of pulling out, those decent amount of inquiries over a period of time, and you're not wasting anything at that point, and again, back to the sexy point, it may not be as exciting, but from a business perspective, it's far more beneficial. Yeah. And obviously,
no, I totally agree.
Last words?
No, look, I'm totally with you guys. I think the key is really again, if I go back to maybe that original point, is customers don't really care whether it's a marketing or sales touch point, right? They just need they just want what they need. And I guess it's up to companies to really kind of figure out, where their strengths are, maybe look at partners who can maybe plug in the gaps where they perhaps don't have those strengths, and really kind of focus on what they're good at. And I think for me, that's really kind of important, and that's a key. I mean, everyone, if we get that piece right and forget about the kind of sales and marketing divide and all of those elements, I think we've got a much more sort of compelling picture here from a customer's perspective, at least. But James, I think, look, thank you very much for your time today and for joining us. I think it's been really, really useful. Andrew, where can everyone find us? And James, actually, where can everyone find you, first and foremost?
At home. No.
You don't want people rocking up at your home, do you, John?
No, true. Well, I've got 5 kids here at the moment, so please feel free to come in and take them off my hands. But no, our website is pipelinebdsolutions.com. I'm sure that's going to be all on the stuff. My emails and phone numbers, I think, can be distributed. But in terms of, from my point of view, it's exciting to be working with Nexa on this, and looking forward to speaking to a few of you who are on the call now to see what we can kind of help you with.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks to you guys, those who send comments through. We've got a couple of questions that we'll take offline as well, and we'll get back to you guys as well. But again, thanks for joining us. Andrew, where can people find us, previous shows and future shows?
Yeah, so you can, on YouTube, we've got the Digital Growth Show now on podcasts, so it goes out as well. You can find us on Spotify, on Apple, on Google, Anchor. You can just search for the Digital Growth Show. And obviously you can connect with us on LinkedIn. So you're kind of happy to jump on. We usually get a whole host of kind of connections after these shows. So, and by all means, I mean, obviously tune in next week again for another live show, or if you want to, obviously, you know, it's all recorded anyway. So yeah, thank you, James, for today. That was great. Good session.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. Good to see you.
Yeah, thanks, guys, and thanks for tuning in, guys.
All right,
Cheers.
guys. Take care.
Bye-bye.
See you later. Bye.